it is cold out here. All right, let's go inside for a second. Okay, much better in here. It is like 4 a.m. We're here at the R90 lighting / positive systems / precision rigging / my random DJ gear over in the corner warehouse. And I'm getting ready to send this guy out on a rental. And the reason I'm here at 4 a.m. is because I have a flight at 6 a.m. We're going to EDC Mexico in Mexico City. Yeah, Mexico City. It's gonna be my first EDC Mexico. So I'm very excited to be taking you guys along for the ride. And I figured we would make this a little bit more of an educational vlog and talk about a specific topic. And that topic is redundancy and the idea of having multiple backups for multiple scenarios, because it's easy to think of the usual things that you back up, right? Like data, but there are a ton of other things that you need to make sure that you have duplicates or a plan B in case of any sort of failure. The reality is that we are trusted as event techs or programmers or designers or stage managers, production managers, anybody in that list. We are responsible for making these shows happen. And these are massive shows. People spend a lot of money and a lot of time. And when it all comes down to it, we are the insurance policy to make sure that everything happens as it should. And there's all sorts of little things that you can do to make sure that you're prepared for any situation. And so that is what I wanted to talk about in this video. Now, as I mentioned, I am here with my MA2. This is going out on rental. It just so happened to match up that I was leaving for the weekend and someone wanted to rent it. So that's why I'm here. I'm here prepping that, and then we'll head over to the airport and down to Mexico City. And that's another good point to consider, because if there's one place that your schedule can get totally messed up for the day, it's the airport. Now, I can't really help you much if you miss your alarm in the morning and that's the reason you miss your flight, but you should always have at least 3 ways of getting to the airport. So worst case scenario, say I got delayed or there was an accident on the road, something that delayed me by a huge amount of time. I've always got the fact that I have my car and I can drive directly to the airport and park at the airport. I keep that kind of in my back pocket. I've only had to use it once in the time that I've been touring, thankfully. But for the most part, I usually just end up parking at the shop here and then Ubering over to the airport. And the artist that I work with, Louis the Child, is gracious enough to pay for that Uber as well as the Uber back. So thanks, guys. If you guys are in the United States and you do more than like even 6 gigs a year, you're flying out, it's definitely worth it to get PreCheck and clear, because it saves you about an hour every time. In fact, most of the time when I come through SeaTac, it's about, well, I want to say 15 minutes from being dropped off at the front to being at the gate, which is pretty sweet. Well, I wish I could say that we got through unscathed, but got here a bill for 1,552 pesos, not dollars, which comes out to like 80 bucks. So originally I was told to not declare anything and that we were kind of under an artist exemption, but they put everything through the X-ray scanner and they're like, no, you don't qualify for the exemption. This is not a musical instrument. So I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. We went through, did all the paperwork, took an extra 30 minutes, but now we are back at the hotel and look at this amazing view. Isn't this just incredible? I haven't had a hotel with like a view this good in a minute. So I'm gonna finish getting everything sorted away in the hotel here. We're gonna go meet up with Scott in just a few minutes and explore a little bit of what Mexico City has to offer, because I've actually never been here before. First time.
top of the video, I mentioned show file backups because it's like the most obvious thing to talk about on this channel regarding backups, but I wanted to explain a little bit more about that because I have a couple different methods of making sure that I don't lose any data. So when I finish prepping a show file at home, I will save it onto this disk, which goes in my pocket. It doesn't really leave my pocket hardly ever. Another kind of junk flash drive that goes in my backpack, and this one I kind of use for like utility stuff. I've got like a bunch of firmware on here for CDJs, most recent show files I've been working on. It's just kind of like a throwaway one that I can toss in the backpack. And then I have this 4-way 32 gigabyte per stick USB hub. It's just, one of the cheap ones you get on Amazon, and this plugs directly into the console, and I have a little strip of magnets that kind of like sticks it to the side of the console when I plug it in. Then I've got a macro that like saves to all 4 of these drives. Well, not to these specific 4 drives, but the first 4 drives that are connected to the console when I hit that macro. Just a little nuance thing about it. But the most important thing is that this goes in my Pelican. The reason being is that I need to have absolute certainty that if I lose the flash drive in my pocket, then I have the one that's on my back, and that's with me in 2 physical places at once. And then the Pelican serves as a second physical like distance barrier. If that gets lost, then I can use the one in my pocket. You kind of see where this is going. And also, before I leave to come do a show, I will make sure that my Dropbox folder with all of my show data for whatever show I'm doing is fully synced up. And then I connect all the computers that I'm taking with me, make sure that they download all the files that I may have just updated. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not, because usually I just kind of have the computers sitting idle in my office anyways. So I just kind of like wake them up, make sure that the green Dropbox sync happens, and then you're good to go. I use Dropbox and Google Drive kind of not interchangeably, but for different types of things. Dropbox, in my experience, has been better for maintaining consistency of files over multiple machines, whereas Google Drive is kind of like more of just an online storage for media, and kind of a backup to Dropbox, because for whatever reason Dropbox stops working, I need to have a second copy of those files online. So that's kind of like more cold storage online. It doesn't like sync with a folder on my desktop. I use Dropbox for that. But none of these backup schemes will really work unless you have a good file naming system, I've discovered. I'm traditionally really bad at naming files. I've migrated over to a more standardized, show name, date name, version name, and then I'll put like a note at the end of it, like, pre-clone or PSR version, just to keep it more straight when I'm scrolling through things. So the most important thing that I want to state for traveling backup is just make one separation. I don't care if it's just one flash drive and one flash drive, and like in your pocket, and then one in the backpack. Just create like one physical separation so that if you lose the backpack or something gets stolen, your hotel room gets broken into, and then all the stuff that was in the hotel room is lost, but that flash drive is still in your pocket, like things like that. Things to consider. So with that said, we've got a lobby call in a few minutes here. We're gonna head downstairs, and I guess the ride over to the venue is about an hour, which is less than EDC Las Vegas. I think it took like 3 hours last time to get out of there. Not a good time. Oh, that's another thing. I'm gonna be at EDC Las Vegas as well this year. Saturday with Young Bay, and then Sunday with Lewis the Child while we're out on tour. It's gonna be kind of an annoying flight schedule, but it'll be a cool show nonetheless. And remember, you should test your backups. It's no good to like have this backup plan in place unless you test it a couple times. So, pretend that all of your luggage got lost and you need to restore from hotel Wi-Fi. Okay, how long is it gonna take you to download your Google Drive or your Dropbox folder that you need for this show? Just things like that. Go through the motion a couple times. Make sure you're ready if and when it does happen. Okay, with that said, gotta head downstairs and then head over to the venue. Let's go do it.
Welcome back to the hotel room. I am just kind of hanging out for a bit until we are ready to go and actually do the show for real. So I'm just kind of sitting here, getting prepared, editing a few things, cleaning up, like effects selections, things like that. Boring stuff, right? But I wanted to continue our talk a little bit about what sort of things you should be considering when it comes to making sure that your role in making sure the show goes on is not impeded. We've already talked about like having backups for show files and like making sure that you get to the airport on time, which is like kind of some no-brainer stuff. But this next section, I want to talk about some more specific things that I've learned personally from touring for the last, I guess it's been 4 years now. Not 24/7 touring, but a couple tours a year, and a combination of bus tours and fly dates has kind of given me this this insight into what's really necessary. So I'm just going to go through the list of items here, and at the end of it, let me know down in the comments below, the like button down there, what sort of things you consider when you're going out to do a show or just do backups in general for things that are mission critical. For those of us out here who are, let's say, not medically ideal specimens, let's say maybe you take medication for treating some sort of ailment you have, or you maybe don't have perfect vision. That's the case for me. I have totally awful vision. In fact, let me show a comparison up on the screen. I'll do like a little simulation here. If you're very well sighted, then this may kind of shock you, but what you're seeing on screen is obviously like what a normal stage would look like from my perspective. And then now, this is what I would see if I were to take out my contact lenses, or they fell out, or I lost my glasses, anything like that. So one of my highest priority things on my checklist of things is always bring a spare set of contacts, and then also my glasses that you saw earlier in this video. This actually came in handy today because during our overnight programming session, as the sun was rising and I was like kind of getting the scratchy eye tireds, I actually had a contact fall out. And if I was in a show situation and I only have one contact or something like that, then it could actually ruin the show. There could be a big enough distraction to where maybe, okay, my vision isn't impaired enough to where I can't see something to run the show properly, but it just takes a little bit more of a distraction, and it takes your attention away from what you need to be doing. And on that same note, have you considered backing yourself up and making your show so foolproof that you could put someone that you trust in the operator's seat and no one would be able to tell the difference? That's kind of the point where I've been getting with these Lose the Child shows. In fact, I've had a couple people fill in on them for me. Josh filled in at Aragon when I had to go do another show in Los Angeles. And I made it as simple as possible to where at the beginning of the show, they just press a green go button, and then they just monitor levels with group masters, and maybe fix little things here and there in the program, or things that any knowledgeable MA programmer can do. This is a totally different discussion than having a show file that anybody can run. It needs to be anybody who you trust can run the show. I'm not saying that you need to automate your show file to a level where you can physically be replaced. And we all know that eventually lighting will get to the point where a lot of shows will be no man operation, not even single man operation. But for these big shows, you're always going to need somebody in charge of making sure that everything works properly. So make sure you are building up a list of trusted contacts, people who know the hardware and software, they know how to troubleshoot things. And on top of all of that, they have very good people skills, and they are able to help the rest of your crew troubleshoot issues as they arise. Next up, always be thinking of the worst case scenario. And depending on what you do and what scope of events you do, these could be different types of things entirely. So for example, what if, and this is a real life example of something that happened, what if you show up to a venue and either A, they didn't get the generator that you specified in the rider, or B, the generator is broken. You need to have an action plan and have phone numbers of people to call to get that solved. And it's crazy to me, I've mentioned this in other videos, but no matter what ridiculous thing happens at the beginning of the day that delays load in by like 2 or 3 hours, or delays the show for whatever reason, the show always goes on. So as long as you're keeping that in your mind, you can kind of work backwards from there, and always know that barring some like
very severe emergency, where someone is injured or like the show physically cannot happen, the show is pretty much always going to go on. And that's almost kind of a comforting thought rather than a scary thought. And in that same vein of thinking about the worst case scenario, I always expect that people aren't going to read the tech writers. Most of the time, they'll read most of the tech writer, but some of the time, they won't read any of it at all, or there'll be a miscommunication, or there'll be a new person who's handling the advancing, and something gets dropped in the process. So knowing your own writer like the back of your hand, in fact, I've got a demo of my writer that I send out for lighting advances for artists that I'm working with. It's up on my Patreon if you want to go check it out. It's a one pager. It just says what I need from the person who is producing the show. Things like network mappings, patch files, and anything that I need to know to show up and do our show. Then I also tell them what I'm bringing as well and what I'll need to interconnect things. So if you assume that your writer hasn't been read, you can prepare your fly kit in advance. And people get upset at both sides of this coin because they'll say, oh, well, they put this on the writer, and then they showed up and they brought it anyways. Well, the reason that the artists or the production crew showed up with things that were on the writer that you had to go and procure is because they've been burned before. So I'm not going to be bringing stuff like an MA2. If that's on the writer and I'm doing a show that I know other artists are having their production team use MA2s, I'm not going to worry about bringing an MA2. But okay, I am going to bring a couple of network switches, a couple just dummy unmanaged network switches, a whole set of Cat5, Cat6 cables, just things like that are on the writer, XLR cables for running the SMPTE lines, things like that. I just bring spares of. It's actually a fun sort of game to play in my head because I'm weird like that. I always just think, what if XYZ? What if the snake gets disconnected on one end? What if we lose power at front of house? What if the Resolume laptop crashes? Okay, all of these things are very real world things. And when you've got, a festival full of 40,000 people and the show has an allotted time slot, then you can't really go over. You don't have time to say, okay, guys, I need 5 minutes to figure this out. You need to be proactive in your what ifs. And that's just kind of a part of building your own risk assessment matrix, if you will. If you're really good at managing your own risk, then you become less of a liability for the people who hire you. And whenever you are putting less stress on them and less workload on their mind, and they know they can rely on you, then that frees up your time to do other things. So if this is all just like a subconscious way that you operate, and you can build that up over time, then it's better for everybody all around. It's way more efficient. And if you get really good at risk assessment and planning all of these contingencies, then maybe one day you can grow up and be a production manager or a tour manager. Although I really wouldn't wish that on anybody. Okay, last two things before we head out and go do the show. Always make sure you have duplicates of your documents, okay? A digital copy and a paper copy. People always make fun of me when I get a paper boarding pass, but I get that because, okay, what if I drop my phone, the screen cracks, it gets broken, damaged, whatever, and I don't have anything else except my ID and that paper boarding pass? Well, I can still complete my whole journey and nothing's really going to be impacted. And I do this with pretty much every important document that I have. I not only have the physical document themselves, but I scan and upload them to a Dropbox folder that's synced just like my show file is. And then lastly, this is an important one for traveling especially, is having cash on hand and having two different credit cards, debit cards. I prefer using credit cards when I travel, especially because it's like a business expense, and at the end of the year I can just total up all of my end of year credit card statements and do it real easy with my taxes. But having two separate cards that are from two different banks, and I go one step further, I do two different payment processing networks. So I have a Visa and I have an American Express card. I know it sounds silly, but it just goes back to having that passive redundancy where you don't even have to think about it. If your card gets declined and that's the only card you have, you're not sitting there like, oh God, what do I do? Instead, it becomes a non-issue. You just take the other card out, and if that doesn't work, then I always carry about $150 worth of cash on hand, as well as a check that I can
right out to whatever amount that I want. And that has pretty much covered me in every situation that has arisen. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed that quick list of things to help you mitigate risk while you are traveling to do shows. And again, let me know down in the comments if you have any specific things that have been really helpful for you. With that said, let's get out of this hotel room and go do a show at EDC Mexico. Let's do it. The great thing about these festivals is they tend to reunite friends from entirely different times in your life. And here's a perfect example. Jeremy Jones is one of the best VJs that I personally know, and he was our VJ on the first Rotten Roll tour. It was my first bus tour. I learned a lot from Jeremy, and it's funny that we've seen more of each other in Mexico than we have seen of each other in Seattle, even though we both live in the Seattle area in the past year.
What?
Who's running, Rob? Scott. Oh, what's happening, dog?
Hey, where's another good pyro cue in the set?
Second drop of Chop It Up.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what kind it is.
Okay. Thank you. Famous last words?
Or pyro.
All right, let's do a show.
The king is cold. I told you to get it on with nobody else but me. With nobody else but me.
So in this example, instead of having just a bitmap rectangle drawn around the entire stage, I have two rectangles that are split along the middle of the stage, and the right side is mirrored from the left side, so you get this mirrored bitmap effect. So it's kind of the best of both worlds between really good symmetric effects and a unique and beautiful bitmap image. And for the first time ever, our tour manager, Pat Brown, came out to front of house to try his hand at firing the pyro. And I think he did a great job. On our tour rig, we have DMX controlled confetti cannons, but on these festival stages, we tend not to have the confetti, and we tend instead to have pyro or cryo or any sort of fireworks that the festival might have on hand. As we bring this video to a close, I want to say thank you for watching all the way through this 26 minute video. I really appreciate it, guys. It means a lot to me. And of course, an extra special thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. The money I earn over there goes towards editing these videos and providing additional content for people who want to get involved in the event industry, and your support means a lot to not only me, but I'm sure everybody else as well. And don't forget, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment down below. It really helps with extending the reach of these videos and bringing the event industry to more people's attention. And until the next video, happy programming.